All right, the Swiss rounds are over. Legacy 4 rounds in the books. Modern 4 rounds in the books. All we have left are the elimination rounds. If you're just joining us or haven't been paying attention closely, $2,500 on the line for the top 8. 7 players getting invited to the Kaldheim qualifier weekend. 1 player getting an invite to the Kaldheim championship. We're bringing in a new commentator for the elimination rounds. Beky Bell is here. Let's bring her in. Hey.
Hi there.
All right. So you said you actually watched through the modern rounds with us. What stood out to you? What jumped out at you? What did you notice?
So I have a few things. Mostly this Green-White Titan deck obviously is doing a lot of things. We have 3 of them in our, or like 3 like Green-White ramp using Titan, using land strategies in the top 8, which obviously is the most prominent deck in our top 8. I was really stoked to see Electro Dominance in the top 8. I remember watching Sean McLaren play a ton of that probably like a year and a half ago. So it's kind of crazy to see like somebody be like, oh, I'm going to bring this kind of rogue deck into the tournament. Obviously, they mostly dominated through Legacy, but that's how these split format tournaments kind of go.
Yeah.
Death Shadow is kind of just like a mainstay staple. It's cool to see John Hamilton go from playing Death and Taxes in Legacy and then also bring a kind of similar strategy in a mono white deck, playing some amount of red in his deck with the Heliod combo. And then Infect also, again, just kind of a mainstay Legacy deck that's sliding its way into this tournament.
All right, so before we get to the bracket, so we played 4 rounds of Legacy, 4 rounds of Modern. Beky, if you were playing in this event, which format would you be more confident in?
Modern, very easily. I have not played a ton of Legacy, and the amount of Legacy that I have played has either been with Burn, Death and Taxes, a little bit of Eldrazi Stompy, which is what I would like to play. If I was having gone into this event, I probably would have studied up on Eldrazi Stompy and played a lot of that because I just really like Eldrazi cards. That would be the thing that I would be the happiest to play. So that would have been what I would have done.
And you would have registered. We have your Modern deck available, so if we have that, bring it up. So you would have played similar. Are all VML like co-casters Tron players? What's going on here?
No, in fact, Hayu Nefet hates Tron.
Okay.
So, but the other 3 of us who cast for VML, yes, are all Tron players. So this would be my version of the deck that I would play.
Okay, so then the question for you as a Tron representative. No Tron players made top 8 of our event. What happened?
The deck just, I'm sure it has kind of a really difficult time against these green-white decks. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I haven't played the matchup, so I wouldn't really know. But looking at what the green-white Titan deck kind of does and knowing the way that this deck usually struggles against things like Scape Shift or other ramp-type strategies, it seems like it could struggle a bit in ways where they probably play a lot of land destruction, so we would struggle to like keep the rocks underneath our feet and stay steady with our
This is the wrong answer. The correct answer is the reason why Tron was not in our top 8 was we hired the 2 Tron players, the 2 best Tron players, to be commentators. So you were ineligible to be in the top 8.
You're right. Exactly. That's
Otherwise,
exactly the
sure
trouble.
You would have been there.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I agree with you. The green-white Reclaimer decks could be an issue. But anyway, that's not the real reason. The real reason is that you're here. You're covering the top 8. You're above it all.
Instead of playing in it.
Exactly. Okay, so we have a top 8 bracket.
Let's take a look.
Nathan Stewart, number 1 overall seed, played out round 8 just for the heck of it, won again. Nathan Stewart, 8-0, on top of the field, on top of everybody.
Sometimes you want to go first.
Right, he'll be going first all the way through, including against Richard Neal, playing Electro Balance in the top 8.
Should be a fast match.
We have a Green-White Titan mirror between Levi Sprung and Josh Feliciano. That's a deck there's lots of tutoring, lots of interactions. There's going to be both players have access to the same set of cards. Going first is going to help. Having good knowledge of what's going on and what's important is also going to help. That'll be interesting how that plays out. We're not going to watch that, though, because it might be a slogfest and it might take a while.
It seems like the type of deck that you either are really jazzed to see the mirror or you want to stay 10 feet away from that mirror, and we decided that we're just going to socially distance from that match.
Perfect. All right, we have Connor Mullally, the number 3 seed, with another Green-White Titan deck against Fabrizio Onteri, our standard trial winner on Teamer Ramp. And finally, our match that we're going to start with on coverage, John Ryan Hamilton against Sam Dams, red-white Heliod combo versus Infect. They'll be interesting because I feel like for a lot of people, and by that I basically mean me, when you think of Heliod combo, you default to thinking of the green-white Heliod combo that has collective company. That's not what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I thought as well. The moment we sat in and we were like, okay, what's in top A? And we said Heliod combo, and I was like, oh, green-white with like Eladamri's call and ways to tutor up creatures. And then we gotta like, no, it's actually red-white. And then we took a look, and it's not really. I have a hard time with decks that are labeled 2 colors when the second color that they're playing is like a card. And the only red card in John Ryan Hamilton's deck that it is red is like 2 copies of Magus of the Moon in the sideboard. So, yeah, I guess it's red-white, but sure. Oh, it does. He does also play Boyle, but
that's what we have to deal with. It's self-reported archetypes, and this is what we get. I mean, it is half red. I mean, he's accurate.
Sure, yeah. It is a big W, little r.
Yeah, right, exactly. I would, if it was me, I would have write capital W, lowercase r.
Yep, exactly.
In that order. But okay, this is what we got. We have a top 8 bracket. We have our player history. So our matchups, just so we have the 4-5 matchup is going to be our primary match on camera. If they finish, then we're going to move to the 3-6 matchup. Titan versus Team Ramp. And this didn't happen by accident. We're expecting the Titan versus Ramp matchup to last longer, so hopefully we can bring you both of them. Now, John Ryan Hamilton.
I do think that the Teamer Ramp should be labeled as Teamer Control, though. We looked at it. It says Teamer Ramp. They registered it as Teamer Ramp. I'm sure it does ramping things. It's playing like Uro, Growth Spiral, all that jazz.
Yeah.
But it really reads as a control deck after actually looking at the cards in the deck.
Sure.
Anyway. That's why we think it's going to take a long time.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and look at our 4-5 matchup. What I'm particularly interested in is how the players got to this point in the tournament, because we had 4 rounds of Legacy. So if a player dominated in Legacy and then fell apart at the end, maybe they're kind of on thin ice here as far as the Modern goes. Yeah, so we see John Ryan Hamilton here, played Death and Taxes in Legacy, went 3-1, and then played, we were saying, the Boros, more or less mono-white Heliod combo, and went 3-0 and drew in. So
I do not believe that John Ryan Hamilton's socials are Namor squads, though. I believe that is a different player.
Okay, so
throwing that out there.
This is probably an accurate facial representation, though. If you see a amorphous blob on the street, it's probably John Ryan Hamilton. So, yeah, finishes in 4th place, losing 1 match in Legacy and then cleaning up the rest of the way and drawing in clean. So congratulations to him. Facing off against Sam Dams. Let's take a look at Sam Dams' route to the top 8. Identical. Lost round 2 of Legacy. Mm-hmm. Sam Dams actually playing Infect in both formats.
Oh, well, I mean, if you have a type, you have a type.
Sure. So Sam Dams, lost round 2, cleaned up the rest of the way, and also drew into the top 8. In fact, the players drew with each other in round 8 and are now facing each other in the top 8. So they tried to avoid playing each other, but no, we said you have to face off. So here
and they both lost in round 2. Like they're just like they're kind of linked in this tournament.
Yeah.
Also, looking at the 2 decks that they did lose to, the control deck for Death and Taxes seems like a rough matchup. Teamer Delver seems like a rough matchup for Infect. So it seems like the tournament's kind of broke in ways that you normally would like. Like the matchups that were going to be difficult for these players are the matchups that they lost.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the players looks like they're ready to go. Let's go ahead and real quick glance at the 2 deck lists. John Ryan Hamilton, white, red Heliod, like you were saying, just 2 mags to the moon of the board, otherwise mono white, just casting off a few dual lands. So we have protection with Giver of Runes. We have the combo with Heliod, Sun's Crown, and Walking Ballista, a couple Ether Vials, some disruptive cards, some tutoring.
Seems like a solid list.
Yeah, seems like a package.
Yeah, this is basically if you're trying to play like a kind of modern Death and Taxes. I guess this isn't super like taxing, but it is playing kind of the similar idea of like Ether Vial to play creatures at instant speed, some removal spells in the form of Path to Exile, playing things like Ariok or Giver of Runes to protect your creatures, and then you also just have this combo finish that sometimes you can just pull out of your back pocket.
Yeah. Okay, now let's take a look at the Infect deck, and we'll just go down to the match whenever the players are ready to start. Sam Dam's green-black Infect. More often, I would say we see green-blue Infect, but black here with Thoughtseize. We have Plague Stinger, Freaks and Crusaders, so actually 2 sets of black Infect creatures. Some removal, and then typical pump spells. All around, solid deck. Something that I would say you don't see all that often in Modern these days, but got the job done today.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see probably a meta call to be playing the black in the deck. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you have blue Infect creatures and blue interaction that you can play if you're playing the blue-green version. But in this version, you're getting access to things like Fatal Push, access to things like Thoughtseize, and a little bit of black play in your sideboard in the form of Liliana the Last Hope, and just like the extra 4 of copies. So it's nice to see when players who are playing, obviously a pet deck, he played Infect in both formats. Obviously, this is his type. So it's cool to see when you make a call for something that could be a meta choice, which is playing the black instead of the blue.
Sure. Deck. So these 2 players already in the money, already in the Kaldheim qualifier weekend, now playing for the honor of disqualifying themselves for the Kaldheim qualifier weekend. Let's see how it goes. John Ryan Hamilton on the play by virtue of being the number 4 overall seed, and leads off with Giver of Runes. Sam Dams with Noble Hierarch. You're hoping for 1-drop, either Noble Hierarch or Glistener Elf. And if you don't have either one, you're in a sketchy place keeping your hand, but all good here with the Noble Hierarch on the board.
Yeah, interesting that we're going to be seeing how the Fatal Pushes and the removal from the opponent's Infect side is to play into this. Obviously very important to remove creatures from this white deck, though it's going to be a little difficult for that to actually get through with this Giver of the Runes being the first creature in play.
Right. Yeah, Lumeric Aspirant, a card that's pretty annoying to play against in limited, but not an overpowering presence. It just over time builds up, and we'll see how things play out here as far as Sam Dams. If he can get around it and evade it, okay. And here we have Phyrexian Crusader. First
conveniently has protection from white.
Yeah, that's kind of a beating.
It's going to be a little unfortunate for Ryan Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, Skyclave Apparition, great card. Exile any nonsense card that's bothering you want that costs 4 or less, with few exceptions, one of them being Phyrexian Crusader.
Yep, unfortunate. That is exactly the type of thing that we would love to get rid of. However, that wording on Phyrexian Crusader, kind of a big deal, and certainly, I'm sure, happy to see it coming out of the Infect deck in this matchup.
And tremendous blocker, too, before it gets started on attacking, as it can just take a couple counters off anything that gets in the way. So Ranger Captain of Eos comes down, tutoring up probably Walking Ballista, which is, in fact, probably the only thing in John Ryan's deck that can interact with the Phyrexian Crusader.
Certainly true, and it's going to be a little difficult for us to actually. We would have to draw a land next turn to be able to play it for the enough mana to kill the Phyrexian Crusader, and we have to hope that we don't die to this Phyrexian Crusader next turn. Because I don't know if anyone has played against Infect recently, but I have ingrained in my brain a million times where I've lost to turn 3 Infect decks. We're going to be going to the Infect decks turn 3, and it's possible that the game could just be over.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. This is, I don't think we want to make this attack. Oh, okay, we're giving protection. I take it back. That's fine. We're getting through. I guess we don't.
If we're not blocking, we're attacking. You know, that age-old phrase.
Yeah, and we don't really need to worry about Giver of Runes protecting our creatures from removal because none of our creatures so far matter. Sam Dams might not waste a removal spell even if he had one. So we have Nexus come down, the newer art style on there. You're an artist. How do you feel about this versus the stock Inkmoth Nexus?
I was really happy to see. Obviously, tattoo art is a really big part of the art scene in general, and it's one of the more accessible forms of art to a lot of the masses. So I think it was really cool to throw in these tattoo style illustrations onto some Magic cards, and I'm really excited to see how they're doing that with Secret Lairs going forward. Ooh, this Thoughtseize. We're seeing the black really shine for this Infect deck, especially in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, this is rough. I mean, Sam Dam's life total is decreasing rapidly, but this Freezing Crusader, yeah, can come in for three Infect, or 3 Poison, whatever we're calling it nowadays. I think it's called Infect usually. I will accept either answer.
Same.
Actually, let me rephrase that. It's coming in for at least 3. Could be more. And okay, the Aspirant, Luminarch Aspirant goes down since the Giver Runes did give protection. This is somewhat costly.
Yeah, okay, so literally a second ago I said we're seeing the black portion of this deck shine. Maybe it's not shining. Maybe if these had all been green cards that were able to pump this Phyrexian Crusader, we'd have been winning this turn. However, now that we're spending a lot of time casting Thoughtseize, casting Fatal Push, we're kind of opening up the gates for this white deck to finish off the Infect deck's dwindling life total.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's certainly... Sam Dam certainly feels much safer, I would imagine, with that Aspirant off the board. And 4 Infect through. So there's a potential here, I guess. I mean, would you consider just killing both Hierarchs here with Path and Skyclave Apparition? I mean, it does reduce 2 incoming damage.
It's hard to say. It's got to be the consideration, because once you're at 4 Infect, it's not going to take that. Like, there's another 4 Infect coming. There's a lot of cards that are going to pump that last 2 Infect damage that would need to end this game completely. So yeah, I think it makes sense to get rid of these Noble Hierarchs and kind of save yourself as much Infect damage as possible.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there is a choice of taking out the Hierarch or the Inkmoth Nexus. I kind of like... I mean, I suppose it's right to just wait up until this point, but
yeah,
could go either way. But yeah, with 4 in the books already, and that is going to do it. This will turn the Crusader into a 6 power creature. So even if the Hierarch goes down, 6 is still enough. And this 6/4 worm with Infect is going to take down game number 1. So Sam Dam's up a game.
On the draw, too. Still up a game. This seems... We have these Ariok champions, and it seems like they should be good because they have this important protection from black, and we're playing against this black deck, but we're just not having the correct interactions to do what we need to do against these Crusaders.
Right. So let's go ahead and bring up the deck lists or the sideboards, whatever we have there. This is pretty small font, the way John Ryan Hamilton displays the game to himself. So let's go towards, here we go, the actual deck list. Now, down a game, what do we have to help ourselves out against a protection from white creature, aside from just hoping they don't draw it?
We don't really have much, it doesn't seem like.
No.
I imagine that we're just hoping that we are able to find a walking ballista and get it big enough to destroy it. I wonder if the Magus of the Moons come in because it saves us from having to deal with a lot of the kind of tricky land infectors and things, that saves us from like Pendelhaven, saves us from Inkmoth Nexus. So I imagine that those are likely going to come in. I like to imagine that Thalia is going to come in, makes it a lot harder to cast a lot of these instant pump spells. That's kind of the direction that I'm thinking it's going to go in.
I think you nailed it. I think it's clear, and I'm sure it's clear to John Ryan Hamilton, that he can't deal with Crusader, so you just try and the rest of the deck. If you draw a Ballista for it, fine. Otherwise, you just hope it doesn't show up and then try and win the game on the merits of the rest of your cards. And looking at Sam Dam's deck, are there any obvious upgrades here? Both players, for the most part, sideboards kind of missing each other because they're not
playing. I was about to say.
Yeah.
If I'm Sam, I'm happy that I won that game 1, and I'm just hoping to find another Crusader and do it all over again, because both the sideboards, it doesn't seem like... I'd be kind of sweating looking at both of these players' sideboards if I'm them.
Yeah, this one is better, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. You get to add like the Fatal Push is already pretty good.
Yeah,
and the Liliana.
Right, Liliana might be relevant. Spellskite could potentially save the other Infect creatures from removal spells. There's no reason to save the Phyrexian Crusader from anything, but I guess it could from a Ballista. I feel like if Sam Dams draws Phyrexian Crusader, he's got an edge in any given game. If he doesn't draw it, I feel like it's open to anybody.
So as a Tron player, and obviously somebody who is very attuned with aggressively mulliganing to find the things that you would like. From your point of view, how much do you aggressively mulligan to find a card like Phyrexian Crusader after watching how good it did in the first game?
I mean, that really depends on if you feel, how strongly you feel about the matchup overall. It certainly, I mean, if your card can't be stopped, then I think if you don't have a great 7, then I think you ship it. On 6, you're probably keeping anything relevant. Here we're on 5. We switched perspective because John Ryan Hamilton's internet wasn't quite holding up, I guess. So we switched to have a clearer picture from Sam Dam's point of view. So we're on the other side, and we're on 5 cards. This isn't the worst 5 ever.
It's not the worst 5 ever. It was really sad that our 6 had 2 Phyrexian Crusaders in it, but no black sources, so we had to ship it back and go to this 5, where we bottomed a Forest and a second Noble Hierarch.
Yeah, so here we can... Okay, we're going to Thoughtseize, and we have Glistener Elf to follow up. I mean, this hand can get a lot of work done.
Oh, this hand looks like it's going to hopefully do the trick, assuming that John Ryan Hamilton doesn't have something like a Path to Exile, or I'm sure he does. I'm sure that you would bring in things like that. It could be a little disastrous if there's also a Walking Ballista in the hand of John Ryan Hamilton, as both of our creatures have 1 toughness, which I imagine is why this Thoughtseize came out.
Path, Skycave Apparition. All right, so...
It sucks because you want to take the path, but since there's 2, you can't really... It feels really bad to take it, so you have to just say, I guess you get to path both my creatures this turn.
I mean, but
that's not even that bad.
Yeah, Sam Dams does need land, and he has a Nexus, so he probably would not be upset if a creature got pathed here, although I don't think it's likely to happen anytime soon.
I was about to say, if we get both the paths out this turn, I'd probably be smiling my face off.
Mm-hmm. So, while we try not to complicate what kind of horror movie smiling your face off actually shows up in, this Land's Cavern comes down. So we have 2 known cards in Path to Exile and 1 unknown card in John Ryan Hamilton's hand. And this is where, I mean, the Heliod combo obviously adds a lot of power to the deck, but in a spot like this where you don't have a ton of cards to work with, something like Stoneforge Mystic is really kind of missed. Mm-hmm. Because that does a lot as a defender and as a threat all at once, and it's just not present in this build of the deck. Inkmoth Nexus comes in for 2 with the capability of being protected. I expect that this path will resolve because Vines would just run into the other path, and that's not doing anything good.
And drawing that second Inkmoth, I think, was actually quite nice.
I agree.
I don't think I would have... The only thing I maybe would have rather seen is... I wouldn't even have rather seen Phyrexian Crusader. We couldn't cast it. So, yeah, I think that second Inkmoth Nexus was one of the best cards that we could have seen in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And going ahead and getting a basic swamp, just in case we draw the Phyrexian Crusader. We want to make sure that we're able to cast that bad boy, put him on the field, and stick him.
Yeah, and thinking about it now, I was thinking actually at the end of Game 1 how Blood Moon actually would have been good versus the double Marsh plus Nexus. But if you're playing with Path to Exile against a deck where you're planning on having to use the Path to Exiles, then the Blood Moon definitely goes down some, and seems reasonable that it may not have actually come in.
That's fair.
And there's a Ballista.
I'd be mad to see the Ballista, but I would be happy that it's not being played for 2. Right. It's going to only get rid of 1 thing. We're okay with that. We've got the Scale Up. We got the Vines.
He might have the... Let's see. Do we have the win?
There's a reason I don't play Infect. I'm sure if I played Infect enough, I'd be able to come up with an answer very quickly.
We don't. We're mana short of being able to do everything. Maybe not. Hold on. No, I think we do. If we animate Nexus, Scale Up, Path comes in, we kick Vines and attack. We're attacking for 11 in the air, I think. No, I'm wrong, because there's not 1 removal spell, there's 2. There's Path in hand
2.
and Ballista on the board.
Ballista, yeah.
Right. So there's no win here.
So the only way we would get around that is if we let the Exalted Trigger go from Noble Hierarch before all that happens, which I can't imagine that it does.
Right. So what do we do here? Do we just attack with?
What consideration is there to
No,
attack with
can't.
both?
Well, we may have to force the issue anyway. If Nexus animates, then it either gets pathed and we gain a land, and then we have less things to play around, or
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and just like play with the exalted trigger.
yeah, I thought about this, but if there's just a block here, then Giver can give protection, and we don't really accomplish anything. I guess. On the other hand, we could just get through for 2. So okay.
All right, that was not something that either of us thought of happening, but just went kind of anticlimactic. Neither played anything, and we just did some attacking.
Yeah, well, this Sam Dams, taking advantage of the fact that Infect's a scary deck to play against, and John Ryan Hamilton not willing to commit there, especially when if now he can put. Whoa. Well,
see, it's always scary to me to be playing against an Infect deck and just like let them drawing more cards because their level of, I mean, if you've played Magic before, it always feels like your opponent always has it, and the Infect player always draws the rest of their pump spells, and so letting them continually go through the game with their Infect creatures in play and draw more cards. Maybe John Ryan Hamilton has played this a lot, and this is how he's had success playing against it. I personally would be very afraid to have gone through that turn and neither player did anything and just be like, okay, well, I feel like what's in your hand is very scary.
Yeah. So now if the same play happens again, now I would expect Ballista to block because not only can it get protection, it can gain a counter. So it would have multiple ways to fight back, basically. There's potentially 2 shots and 2 shots of Ballista, and Sam Dams would have to act first. So I think even though the attack last turn worked very well, I would be hesitant to go in again.
Yeah, and now that we have the Might of Old Corroso, we have kind of 2 different instant speed pump spells. So it makes me more interested in also animating the Inkmoth Nexus and just trying to get as much out of John Ryan Hamilton's hand as possible so that we're able to use the scale up on whatever remains next turn. Or we'll use the scale up now. We're just going to try and force the matter as much as possible, it seems.
Well, so we have because we have the 2 bone spells, we can't kick the vines now. If so the vines can come in unkicked here using Hierarch first, which makes sense. And then oh my gosh.
Okay, so there was a moment where I was like, should I mention the possibility that he could maybe just have 2 paths in his hand? Nah, there's no way. He's already played one. The chances of him having all 3 path exiles in the top 11 cards of his deck is so unlikely. It's just not worth it. And now I regret not saying it, of course.
So so this attack is now free attack. It still could have been blocked, and I'm still kind of surprised it wasn't, but that one was free as there was no risk really because for Sam Dams, because his creature couldn't die since the mana had been spent and the Ballista couldn't be pumped anymore. Now the Ballista's pumped. Now, oh boy, tag for 2.
Yeah, this seems a little spooky now. It always has got to feel, again, never played Infect, but it's got to feel a little scary to be an Infect player and watch your opponent put an extra counter onto Walking Ballista and just be like, oh no.
Yeah, so the Ballista does not.
Ooh.
The Ballista could have traded for the Glistener Elf there in response to the pump spell, leaving both players empty-handed. That did not happen. I'm sorry, not empty-handed. John Ryan has 1 card.
Yeah.
Now this Glistener Elf will get in. And if a block doesn't happen here, then a 4 power boost pump spell would end the
trade
game.
happen now. It seems really weird to again let your Infect opponent draw another card on the chance that it could be another pump spell and you get blown out here.
Yeah. So unless there's a 3-drop under the vial, which is a possibility, this is just going to get in for 2 more because I don't think the Giver can just give itself up to block here.
I think that card is on the off chance that you're able to stabilize. Kind of too important.
It is a block. I feel like the Ballista attack was maybe a little unwise as it basically cost us our Giver of Runes here. and it could have stayed back, and getting that two damage didn't matter a whole lot. And then so Crusader's drawn, and now having Ballista is really nice.
It's really nice, but that Walking Ballista has to. I think we have to like use all of our mana this turn, throw another counter onto this Walking Ballista, and get that off the board. Otherwise, it's just too terrorizing to John Ryan Hamilton's deck.
I agree. It needs to be removed now. Yeah, another reason to try and preserve the Ballista is that if Heliod's drawn, you have the out to win the game. But we're not there. We're trying to stay alive. And I know it's an important, lesson is that while you're trying to stay alive, you still need to be trying to win the game also.
Yeah.
But here, I think we made it a little bit harder for ourselves by attacking there.
So maybe that was the reason that John Ryan Hamilton didn't use the last counter on the Walking Ballista last turn. Like, if a Phyrexian Crusader does come down, I need this Walking Ballista alive. So heads up play on his side for keeping that. Now I'm concerned what is in his hand.
Yeah, well, last turn we know that mana had to be spent on the Ballista. So there's at least, that works. Okay. That holds off everything.
Sort of.
Not anymore.
But it also kind of says I have to block. Though we do still have 2 cards in our hand. It is weird. We've had this Ether Vial on 3. It stayed on 3. Mana last turn had to be spent on Walking Ballista, so we can kind of assume that the creatures were either 2 or 1 cost. But then, why weren't they played this turn as well when we have open mana?
Okay, so that.
So that's why the Vial has stayed on 3.
Yeah. That eliminates all offense from Sam Dams this game. I feel like John Ryan Hamilton could have fewer poison on him right now if he played slightly differently. However, he is firmly in command of the game right now, so he appears to know what he's doing. And the draw is a Crusader? No.
That's what we needed.
Yeah.
All right. So even though we've sat here critiquing how John Ryan Hamilton has played this game, now he is in the driver's seat and kind of taking over how this is being played.
Aspirant, not a bad draw either. I guess it doesn't dramatically change the clock, but the more Herrick chump blocks. And so I think there's still a route to victory here. If the next 2 draws are Crusader and Pump Spell, I think Sam Dams would win the game. The first draw is Force of Vigor.
Do you think it's interesting that card came into the deck?
So only that. So I have a couple thoughts on this. If we're planning on sideboarding it back out, then I agree with casting it there because now your opponent maybe will play around it.
Yeah.
If you're leaving it in the deck, why did we just show our opponent that we had it?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. Especially, we only brought 1 in. Okay, this is interesting. I would really hope that it comes out now. Otherwise, we just showed that we are playing this card. This seems weird. Okay, we're submitting it. All right, maybe John Ryan Hamilton will think that we took it out of our deck.
I mean,
we're just mind gaming.
It does make sense as a card. It kills. It kills Ether Vial. That was nice, but it's not everything. It kills Ballista.
Yeah, which is important. It's a lot of mana to kill Ballista, but it kills Ballista.
It is. It's a lot of mana or cards to kill Ballista, but getting Ballista off the board is pretty crucial. As we saw that last game, the Ballista was really, really good. It does look like there's a number of pump spells in the board. I think 1 Fatal Push started out in the board, so that came in. Spell Spice,
one Fatal Push and 1 Thoughtseize, and those both came in.
And the Spell Skies came in, So, and the Force. All right.
I do think it's interesting that these Lilianas aren't coming into play.
I thought that too. They do. They kill Thalias. They kill Luminarch Aspirants if they haven't pumped themselves. But it's also just a threat that makes creatures smaller on top of that. Even if it's not killing the creature, it's another. If John Ryan Hamilton has to spend all his resources to try and stay alive, Liliana represents an alternate win condition if it can somehow.
So I think it's interesting that we're picking to bring in Force of Vigor instead of something like Liliana the Last Hope that can be a removable spell, can just be pressure, can just be alleviating your life total. Should something like what happened that game happen again?
So you know what this means, right? Is that Force Awakens is going to win the match?
Oh yeah, of course. 1,000. See, it's in our opening hand. It's somehow going to win us this game. Oh, okay, we mulliganed, but oof.
Oh no!
Oh no!
This is rough. Battle all day, top 8 of the Showdown, going to 5. I believe for the second. Did Sandams go to 5 last game also?
He went to 5 last game as well. Yeah.
Well, that one's not a keeper.
All right, this hand can do it though.
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
What do we put back though? Yeah, all right, that makes sense. It is a little scary to keep a Phyrexian Crusader that we're unable to cast. However, I think that the sheer power of that card against this deck makes it worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a nitpicker, but I don't like to see that fetch for over on 2 on turn 1. We need another black, so I just like fetching out one of the black out of the deck. I feel like we could have just played that off of the Pendelhaven. Because now what are we playing on turn 2?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like now we should have, if we would have gone Nexus now, then we have more potential
for a big blowout turn.
Board. I mean, this gives us the option of drawing black mana for Crusader, so maybe that's better off. But either way, I wish we would have started with Pendelhaven on turn 1. Nevertheless, this is what happened, and given that we have mulligan to 5, this is not the worst position to be in.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's kind of the situation that I like to, or the mindset that I like to stay in, especially if I'm the player that's been mulliganing a lot, is this isn't the worst hand that I could have considering the circumstances.
And here is the second black source arriving conveniently.
Yeah, all right. So this is a thing that we've also talked about as Tron players. Sometimes you are just going to assume that your creatures are going to get pathed, and you're just going to get green sources. So you don't aggressively try to get green sources because they will just be handed to you. Perhaps that's what Sam thought about. I don't need to be so worried about getting a second black source because it will be handed to me in the form of Path to Exile.
Right, and there it is. And now there's the Crusader on the board. John Ryan Hamilton must have obviously has some business in his hand because we haven't seen anything on the board on the first couple turns, no other creatures. So here comes a Ballista.
Imagine, yeah. We don't even need to see the little pop-up. We know what's going into the hand.
Whoa! Ooh. I'll see you, Ballista, and raise you 1 Phyrexian Crusader.
A 2 Phyrexian Crusaders in total coming onto this board. And let's animate this on Nexus too and just try to I mean, if I don't have pump spells, I'm just going to have a bunch of Infect creatures, and hopefully they get the job done.
Yep. Okay, so this comes in for 5. It'll be interesting next turn to see how Sandam chooses to play this, because Ballista for 2 coming down, it can obviously kill 1 Crusader. It can fog the other one by blocking unless the Fatal Push is expended just to push it out of the way.
I imagine that we would. I suppose it depends on our draw. So assuming that this Walking Ballista comes down, what do you think is the optimal play for the Infect player this upcoming turn that's going to get the most damage onto them?
Well, so I guess we could, if we attack in with the both Nexus, those are kind of free because the Ballista can't shoot down the Nexus anyway. It has to shoot the Crusader. So I think you could just send in everything. Drawing a land, you could end. Oh, this is. You know what? No, here's what I would like to see. Push the Ballista now, and you guarantee 4 getting through,
or possibly 5. You could do 5 because you have a Pendelhaven.
Yeah.
So this is lethal.
Yeah. This is it.
Ballista. And actually, drawing a land was perfect.
Yes, it was. So 2 animations. Yeah. So John Ryan Hamilton. Reading the board can see that he's dead, barring Sandam's just not going for all the possible damage. But I don't think you top 8 events with Infect if you don't routinely just go for all possible damage. And that's what we're going to see here. Pendelhaven pumps. This Pendelhaven actually did some work this game. And Sam Dams is going to defeat John Ryan Hamilton and advance to the semifinals.
Yep. The GG's in the chat. The swinging for 5 Infect. We see the 5 Infect on John Ryan Hamilton. And Sam Dams is going to take this game with black, green Infect.
Okay, so that's one down. I don't have results from the other matches yet. I believe they are in, or at least some of them
Yeah.
are. We don't know what they are. So while they get sorted out, let's go ahead and take a moment. Becky and I are going to just go over some of the kind of the win rates of some of the archetypes. Actually, we just saw Infect win. Let's go ahead and look at how did Infect do in the event during the Swiss.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Let's take a look at it.
okay, so we have there might be more than one classification depending on if their green black Infect is notated differently. Let me
I
check.
don't believe it is. I think all of our infects are clumped together.
Okay, so we had 4 Infect players in the event, and collectively they won 60% of their matches. It's respectable. That's a good win rate. Now it's not the sample size is too small to say like, oh, this deck's awesome.
Yeah.
But
that's like a Modern is famous for being one of the most diverse formats. It's an older format, so a lot of people will pull out kind of just their pet decks. A lot of people will try to pave the way with new decks. And it is interesting to see that one of the most represented decks in this tournament for Modern is Rakdos Death Shadow, which usually we're used to seeing things like Grixis Death Shadow. So it's interesting to see newer cards that have come out that have taken the blue completely out of that deck and made it just red-black.
Yeah. Another thing that's worth noting while we're looking at, I know we can't show it to you on the screen because we didn't, again, I've said this earlier today, we didn't know we were going to have access to this leading to the event. So we don't have this time around. We can't display it for you, but we'll try and work on that for next year. But we can see there were 4 Titan Shift players in the event. Or I'm sorry, Selesnya Ramp. Okay, there actually is multiple.
Yeah. There's a lot of Titan decks.
A lot of Titan X decks in the event. We had 4 Selesnya lands, 3 Selesnya ramps, 4 Titan shifts. But there are 3 green-white Titan decks from that community of options in the top 8, including one guaranteed to top 4, barring a double disqualification.
Anything is possible, but yes. It is interesting to see how Prime... I don't know. I feel like a year ago people were talking about Primetime possibly getting banned. And now to see it just like still be kind of this like dominating force.
Yeah.
Again, some new cards have been quite nice to it.
Yeah, and we see, I mean, there were 2 Amulet Titan players. So Amulet Titan, which was the Primetime deck, is now like 5th in the Primetime deck hierarchy.
Yep.
Following up several other ones. So it's unclear based on what we're hearing right now whether the top 4 brackets are ready to go or not. I'll wait to be informed.
Do we want to make predictions?
I'm Green White Titan won a match.
Oh. Okay.
Right, so here's
there's going to be one Green White Titan deck for sure.
All right. So you want to guess the rest of these results before we show them to us. And chat, if you want to chat, go nuts.
Yeah.
You know, if you guys think you can predict the winners of these matches, we watched John Ryan Hamilton lose in 3 games to Sam Dams. So Sam Dams is through. Green White Titan won. We'll call it the green matchup. So that leaves red and blue. So red matchup: Nathan Stewart versus Richard Neal. Red Black Death Shadow. Nathan Stewart undefeated on the day versus Richard Neal, Electro Balance, who went 2-2 with that deck. What do we think?
Normally I would say that Electro Balance is just the exact type of cheese strategy you would need to defeat Red Black Death Shadow. But I think being on the draw probably was too difficult for the deck. I think Electro Balance thrives mostly on being on the play. I think being on the draw probably was just too difficult for it, and I think that Nathan Stewart with Red Black Death Shadow probably took it down.
Sure. Another factor, I feel like Electro Balance in some ways is there's 8 enablers and then there's the payoffs. And this card is great at breaking up things that require one of each of a class of cards. So yeah, I'll go with you on that one. And then we had down the bottom right, the blue matchup. We had Connor Mullally, Green White Titan, versus Fabrizio and Terry, Teamer Control. You went first on that one. I'll go first this time. The control deck is, I mean, it has some ramp aspects, Uro, Growth Spiral, but it's a lot of counters, a lot of permission. I like the Green White Titans deck chances. I feel like this deck fights through stuff really well. It's redundant. It's heavy hitter cards just do so much work. And in the sideboard, there are likely to be something. We saw chokes. We saw, there's Cavern of Souls. I'm gonna say Connor Mullally is gonna win that match.
I had to go look at the sideboard. There are no chokes in the sideboard. I was also trying to look and see how many Veil of Summers were in the sideboard. There are none. I'm going to say that Fabrizio took it.
Okay. I'm going to still go with Connor because what you've just told me is Connor thinks he can smash blue so badly he doesn't need choke or Veil of Summer.
Okay, that's a fair assumption. Okay, I like that thought process. Okay, all right.
Let's go and advance to the top 4 bracket, which I believe 3 of the 4 matches are done. If we have this ready, actually, it looks like all the matches are done. So we have Nathan Stewart. We were correct on that one. We saw Sam Dams. We watched. Josh Feliciano won the Green White Titan mirror, and
I guess he was just so ready to play against a blue deck that he didn't need Veil of Summer or choke. So you were right there.
Yeah, that's the important part. I was right. So yes,
of course.
So now Josh Feliciano, who just won the Green White Titan mirror, is going to play a Green White Titan mirror. So if he won the last match by being fortunate, well, okay, he's got to you
got to prove yourself again.
Win the flip again. But if he won because of having a good strategy and knowing what's important, well, that knowledge will pay off again because he gets to show it off again. On the other side of the bracket, Nathan Stewart, Death Shadow versus Sam Dams Infect. So there's going to be more variety of removal, I would expect. And Nathan Stewart gets paid off somewhat here by being able to sacrifice his life total as much as he wants and have it not matter against the Infect deck. Mm-hmm. So,
it'll be really interesting to see how much we watched the removal not be so prominent for the white deck, especially with Phyrexian Crusader and our deck having protection from white made it really difficult for that white combo deck. So it'll be really interesting to see how much the removal actually matters and if it's going to really help Nathan Stewart get through with Death Shadows, with Skyclave. What was it called? The Death Shadow 2.0.
Of the Skyclaves.
Scourge of the Skyclaves. See, Caroline said it's always Skyclave something, but I couldn't remember the other part.
In the set. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to step away for a minute, get the players seated and ready to go and get the camera sharing set up. So top 4 will be back momentarily. Stick around. We're coming right back.